Let's have a few more days in the end of the week.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, approval of the minutes of our last meeting, April the 9th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We have no new committee members. We do have everybody here except John Russell has some personal issues out of town, as well as Chip Smith. So we're missing 2 committee members today. Matt Kirks is here, Bruce Fry, Jack Gordon, and Bob Collins. We also have present our town clerk, Raylene Menominee, our town manager, Cliff Gravier, our IT director, Will Wharton, and our assistant town manager, Terry Tiemann. I'm going to move, we have a presentation today, so we're going to go directly to that. I will introduce to you Jordana Kadijar, a Delaware Department of Natural Resources Resilience Planner. She handles the IDAP program for DENREC, which is an online flooding and planning adaptation tool. It is designed to help Delaware residents adapt to increasing flooding with regard to their property and local Delaware homes. I believe Jordana is also going to extend this a little bit and discuss nuisance flooding and its potential solutions, as well as DENREC's climate action plan, which I believe is going through public meetings now, isn't it?
Yeah, in October. Well, we're in October, so yeah.
Okay.
It's here already.
Well, fantastic. Can you, you could use do you want to use a walk-around mic or?
Wow.
Thank you, Jordana.
Okay, it's a very nice room. Well, hello everyone. As Ron said, my name is Jordana Kutayar, and I am a resilience planner. iAdapt is a tool we recently released to help with personalizing flood adaptation measures. And so I'll be talking a lot about that, and then just some other general resources that may be helpful to y'all, I'm hoping. But I just wanted to introduce myself first because, you know, who am I? I'm from DENREC. I'm sure you have encountered a lot of people from DENREC. But I'm from Florida originally. I kind of got started in the water quality world and lake management, working with harmful algal blooms. And then I shifted when I did my master's at Texas A&M, focusing on coastal science and marine biology. Before coming to Delaware for a fellowship with DENREC, I was a NOAA Coastal Management Fellow, working with frontline communities, dealing with the effects of climate change, a lot of flooding, as you can imagine. But I have been through my fair share of climate disasters and flooding personally, so this is a matter I really care about, and it's a matter I want to learn from all of you about, since you are living here every day and dealing with flooding on a regular basis. And so with that in mind, I'm going to talk just a little bit about climate change in Delaware specifically. I'm sure this won't be, you know, groundbreaking for you, but then I'll get into the tool and some of the solutions as well as where to access it, and the adaptation strategy documents, which are truly the bread and butter of the tool. This is the actual advice that can help with your properties. And so getting started, just to ground us in this conversation, with greenhouse gases, our major inputs in Delaware being industry, transportation, and a little bit from ag, we're experiencing that warming, we're experiencing that extreme heat, and water molecules are expanding, ice is melting, and all of that is being felt globally with sea levels rising. And unfortunately, for us, being in the mid-Atlantic, right about here, we are in a hot spot for sea level rise. And we're only second to the Gulf Coast, which is experiencing the highest rates. This is only looking at change since 1990. But in Delaware, we actually have a really good monitoring system. These are from the tide gauges in Lewis. And so we have been tracking this since the early 1900s. And so this was work done by the previous climatologist, Dr. Dan Leathers, and you can kind of see in the span of 100 years, we've had about a 14-inch increase, so over a foot. And with these scenarios looking business as usual, if we don't do anything, if we don't make change, we can see anywhere between 9 to 23 inches, and there's still variability in that. And I will say, since I will be talking about the Climate Action Plan, that we will be updating these maps and these scenarios this November. And so more information is to come, but I wanted to show you just the science that we had available. And we see very similar trends in other areas. Another major source of flooding is rain, because anywhere it can rain, it can flood, right? And so unfortunately, we've been seeing about a 1/4 of an inch increase there per decade. And I thought this was really interesting because, again, we're projecting upwards, of course, but Delaware averages about, oh, good, okay. Thank you. Good. 45 inches of rain in a year. And just to put that into perspective, Hurricane Helene dropped 30 inches of rain in North Carolina in the span of a day. So it really, a 1/4 of an inch doesn't seem like much, but it accumulates over time. And specifically in Delaware, being the lowest lying state, nowhere in the state is more than 12 miles or so from water. So these heavy rain events and these intense storm events can really change things quite dramatically. And so these are all things we're monitoring and trying to be more aware of. And so these are some of the photos Ron had sent me about the nuisance flooding that y'all are experiencing, right? So when we talk about climate change, it feels like a far off thing, but we're experiencing those effects today. And so, okay, what now? We're flooding. We know that we're flooding. Most of your community is in the floodplain. So the tool I'm going to be talking about is really intended to be a guide to start that conversation and to start people thinking about long-term solutions and what they can do. And it is also about having this information in one location without having to go all over the place to get the information that you need. And so Nicole Marks was a previous NOAA Coastal Management Fellow, and she's the one who created the tool. Development started in 2020, so it has been a long time coming, but really the goal was just to help people become more resilient to flooding, because we know it's a problem today and going to continue to be, so how can we protect those properties? And so IADAPT is actually an acronym. It stands for the Individual Adaptation, Decision, and Planning Tool. And it basically uses information from users like yourself to provide personalized recommendations based on your property. And she created this tool using ArcGIS and Power Automate, and this is kind of what it looks like, the instructions when you get to it. But during this time, the reason it took a little bit of time to create it, she was working, doing a literature review, meeting with different having different consultations with experts in the field, getting their inputs on the kind of strategies that we should offer. And she also had a public focus group with citizens like yourself to weigh in and, let us know if this makes sense, if this is relevant to people. So a lot of good work went into it, and it really is special because it is just for Delaware. This wouldn't work in North Carolina or any other state, and we really wanted it to be available to property owners, so whether you rent or own your home or have a business, both of those are totally acceptable to be used for this tool. And so, since I'm talking so much about the tool, I'm going to tell you where you can actually find it. You can scan the QR code if you want, but de.gov/iAdapt is the web page. It's through our coastal programs. And this is kind of what it looks like when you first pull it up. And on the website, you'll find the tool, of course, but you'll also get instructions. You can find definitions. If you're like, what is a once in 100-year flood event? It's all there, as well as the strategies and everything else you could really want. You could do a deep dive if you wanted to get in the weeds with it. And I'm just gonna walk you through how it actually works. And so you start by looking up your property location. The tool is, since it is made in ArcGIS, will pull up that data. So we just say, be as accurate as possible and really zoom in and make sure this is reflecting your space, because on the back end of the tool, we're extracting data from a bunch of different web maps. So we're looking at inundation layers, we're looking at the FEMA floodplains, and different evacuation routes and all of that. So just to give you the best information possible, we want to be as accurate with the property. And with all the questions, so it's multiple choice questions. You'll talk about the physical factors of your property. So things like, do you have a yard? Is your property waterfront? All of those individual differences can change the type of flood solutions that would work for y'all. The next set of questions deals with your preferences. And so these are really aimed at trying to understand risk. What kind of risk are people willing to accept? Some people may be okay with the road flooding every now and again. For other people, that is just inaccessible and not gonna work for them, So trying to understand finances, insurance, how long you wanna be there, all will affect the kind of solutions that are available to you. And so when you finish answering these multiple choice questions, you'll get the results right then and there. And they're grouped into two buckets. One are things that you can do today. And so these are going to be lower reach items, maybe moving things or elevating things from your basement or your first floor level. Whereas future strategies are going to be these bigger projects that will take a little bit more. But we did the tool out to 2050. And so that's kind of the future time range we're looking at with iAdapt. And so all of those results have adaptation strategies attached to them. That's what they actually are. And it gives you information on each and everything, even if it is just elevating items. There will be a lot of, as I will show you, this is an example. So this is what it looks like when you get your results, and it's all hyperlinked. So you can just click on it, and you'll immediately get access to a PDF that gives you just a wealth of information in bite-sized chunks. And you also have the chance to get it emailed to you, which I would recommend. To make this tool more accessible to folks, we have an automatic delete function built in, so none of your personal data or information is being saved or stored for any other purpose. It's really just for you to use and keep that information. We're not going to spam you with emails or anything like that. It's for your knowledge. But these strategies, like I said, there is a diversity of them. There's about 93 different strategies, and they're all in different categories. So things you could do to the outside of your house or the inside, shoreline, if you have a shoreline, yard, and then everything else. And so moving forward, oops, sorry. This is just giving you a little more of that breakdown that I kind of highlighted, but it'll go through a potential cost and benefits of, when you're trying to make that decision, if it's worthwhile to do this. It'll also let you know if you need to reach out to anyone for permitting, additional contact information, all this good stuff. So they really are helpful and really expansive as well. And so I did say I would talk a little bit about nuisance flooding. Ron, thankfully, when we met at creating a flood-ready community event hosted by the Coastal Training Program in May, had approached me. I was talking about iAdapt, which is what I tend to do. But just looking at these photos, not being an expert, you know your community better than I do, and not being a contractor, it does look like a lot of hardened, impervious surfaces, right? Like grass doesn't have a particularly deep root system, so of course it's going to be inundated and not really be able to support that water. And so some solutions that iAdapt does cover that you probably are already aware of, but wanted to highlight, of course, permeable pavement, and Ron was just telling me you guys have experimented with that as well, but when done correctly, and maybe, you know, in an area where there isn't as much sand, they can have a longer lifespan than traditional pavement and filter out some of the pollutants and things that are going to be washing through your community during a flood. Other very small, you know, things that can be done. These are greenways and different catchment systems, of course, trying to use natural infrastructure to take up some of that water. And I wanted to, well, in terms of greening things, I know Tree for Every Delawarean, known as Teddy, is an initiative we also have at DENREC to put more trees in the ground and expand that. They will be doing free tree giveaways. It may be of interest, so I figured I would plug that as well. But one thing that did come up, I know with Hurricane Ida and the flooding there, was the storm drains, you know, being clogged and being backed up. And so that is one small thing that can make a big difference as well. I'm sure you guys are on it, but just wanted to shout out some of the big ones that came to mind. But other opportunities, in DENREC in the coastal program section, we also have our Resilient Community Partnership, which I believe Bethany has been involved with over the years. But this is just a map of some of the communities we've worked in. And this is kind of like a planning grant opportunity, smaller scale. But I like to think of it as kind of one of your first steps, because a lot of these communities have done feasibility studies, drainage studies, so kind of the things you have to have figured out before you might go out for FEMA funding or an EPA grant that's bigger in scale. And this can be helpful in terms of mitigating for sea level rise and flooding. There's been a variety of different projects, but that is always an opportunity and an option that I wanted to make you aware of. And then I also am going to talk briefly about the Climate Action Plan, just because there has been so many bills that have recently been passed in 2023 and again in 2024 pertaining to all sorts of climate and energy rules and regulations. And so I'm not going to go through all of this, but I just wanted to, you know, emphasize some of the highlights. And we're going to be updating this Climate Action Plan every 5 years with implementation reports in between, and there's going to be a lot more effort to come up with solutions and to really take action and not just, you know, make suggestions. And so one example of this is comprehensive planning, and so, you know, future comprehensive plans will have to consider vulnerability and resilience. I know many already do. But then these strategies will be informed by our climate action plan that we are putting forth. So trying to give it a little bit more teeth and not just like, maybe you shouldn't build in the flood zone, or however it's been going. And so with that, I just want to say there are a lot of opportunities to get involved, and we're really trying to make it collaborative and engaging so you can give us feedback on types of things that are priorities to you. What do you want to protect? What do you want to see? And so I really encourage you all, if you're able, to come out with us in October and kind of make your voice heard and maybe even learn about some additional programs. I will be there talking about iAdapt, of course, but there's a lot going on with the energy section and everything else that's really exciting. And so I just wanted to plug the information here if you weren't already aware. I also have pamphlets if anyone is interested. And I really just want to thank you for your time. And part of the reason I am here is to be a resource. I haven't been with DENREC long, but if I don't know the answer, I can surely find someone that can get it for you. So with that, I'll pause and just thank you and see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Jordana. Any questions from the audience? Please, hold on. Can you?
Thank you. Yes. The bay levels in the inland bays are monitored by the U.S. Geological Survey. And they put the monitors, there's one in Little Assawoman Bay, there's one down in Fenwick Island, and there's one in South Bethany. When they were installed one in 1999, the other in 2005. And if you look at the bay levels over that period of time and annualize the average high tides, they don't fluctuate a whole lot. But last Friday night, that rain that we had, the tide was coming down when that rain was coming, but the tide levels in the bay started to fluctuate, and fluctuated for maybe a couple hours. And it fluctuated multiple inches, more than the rainfall. What did we get, a half inch of rain, maybe 3/4 inch of rain? But the bay levels were coming up. That water is coming from runoff from catch basins in the developments that are around the bays now. Who is monitoring how much development there is and how much drainage is allowed going into these inland bays? I hope there's an answer.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I do not know, unfortunately. But if you're I'm assuming with the Back Bay study going on that they would be looking at that data as well. Because you're saying it's actively being monitored. So if it's not publicly available data.
Oh, yeah, you can go right
Yeah,
on. You
so-
can Google it. Just Google USGS, and there's monitor numbers, that 8-digit number
Right.
for each one.
But the runoff specifically.
Well,
So
Yeah.
in terms of regulating growth, it would be the county outside of incorporated municipalities, and it would be Sussex Conservation that monitors and decides and plans for groundwater and what happens with that groundwater runoff from those developments.
Yeah, that's why I kind of mentioned the comprehensive planning.
yeah, I'd like to think that
because-
there's somebody a little bit bigger than Sussex County looking at all this, though. They're saying, hey, somebody's got to control the growth of, otherwise we're just going to sink ourselves.
I think there's a lot of people that feel that way, but it's not had much impact to date, so the county controls it.
Well, this is a state environmental agency, right?
Well, Sussex Conservation is a subset of the state, so when they look at runoff, when they permit development, they're required to regulate what happens to that runoff, retention ponds, wet gardens, whatever you will. They step in there. But there's nobody in place in state or federal government that regulates what the county allows to be built in non-incorporated areas.
Maybe that's our problem then.
And that's why I mentioned the comprehensive plans, because without teeth, you can make the suggestion, and it does get suggested time and time again, like maybe don't develop in this area because we know it currently floods and will continue to, but it's just a suggestion, so there's no real accountability for the developer to take that suggestion unless there is a rule or something in place.
Yeah,
Telling
I
them
believe
not
there
to.
have been some steps in terms of buffers and that sort of thing.
Right, and they should have catchments but of course, it's not gonna get everything.
Yeah, you're right, though, in terms of development, I think we'd all like to see it slow down, but that's a county issue there.
Yeah, it's land management.
Well, all these catch basins are catching water that used to go into farmland and soak in. And now it's getting caught and running into the bay.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was amazing to see that graph. You can go on and look at it if you go on the USGS monitor for either one of them in Little Assateague Bay. The tide was coming down, and all of a sudden you just saw it swoop back up several inches, and then peaked out and started coming down again.
Yeah, so it's coming from somewhere. For sure.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Wasn't, not to excuse that happening, but wasn't last weekend that super moon and the blue moon and all that?
Yes,
And the
we've
high
had almost
tide.
2 weeks of unusually high tides in a row, and you've seen it here in Bethany. We've had
Yeah.
2 weeks of sunny day flooding, so,
Yeah.
yeah, I know.
That's because the perigee axis last month and this month is very, very short. As a matter of fact, this month, it's going to be 111 kilometers shorter than last month. So our natural tides are even going to be more steep for October than September.
Are going to be worse?
Yes, the moon's going to be 111 kilometers closer than it was last month.
Joy.
Then it'll start. Are you all familiar with the lunar orbit? It's not a circle, it's an oval.
Yep.
And it's not a constant oval. Seasonally, the perigee and apogee axis change. They shorten and lengthen.
Yeah, you combine that with storms that are offshore, and they may not even be affecting us. I know that there are several, you know, from watching the Weather Channel and whatever, there are several large storms that are going to be going up
Yep,
through the ocean. They're not going to be here, but they're certainly going to affect us in terms
yeah,
of tides and rough waters.
yep, Kirk for sure.
Well, if you factor that in with Dr. Weather's slide, with the tidal heights at the Indian River Inlet, I mean, we're in a very different place than we were just a few years ago, so.
Absolutely.
Another big factor for the September flooding was not only was the perigee axis very short, but we had those incredible east winds that would not slow
Yes.
down.
Even
So
now.
when
it
the
seems-
water came into the bay, it couldn't get back out.
Right.
And
It's
then
been
you notice when the wind
northeast and east
subsided, the
winds.
tide started going back down again.
Yeah, we haven't had a southerly wind or westerly wind in quite a while. So, any other questions?
No, thank you.
Committee, any thoughts? Any questions? Oh,
I just wanted to let everyone know that the iAdapt link is on our webpage under flooding, so you can catch that link there.
Thank you.
yeah. And it is very helpful. I went through and did it. It gives you a little insight on your property. And, you know, it can be a rain garden or whatever, but, and they're all little steps. So it's the little things that can help somewhat. Unfortunately, our town is 85% in the floodplain. What do you do? You know? And we're working on the dam, which is now in the permit process. I was talking to Jordana about this earlier, that our engineers and engineering studies have indicated that it will hold off 95% of our nuisance flooding, and that's not just the flooding down here on Pennsylvania, but it's also the flooding back in the villas and Stewart's Watch and Tingle and Lake Bethany, where you have a lot of tidal flooding. So, but anyway, it's a slow process getting these things approved. We'd love to be building it right now, but all the studies and the initial design is all there. So we're in the permit process now. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very informative, a good app. I hope everybody gets out there and tries it out. The next item we have on the agenda is, and Will, can you bring up those photos? We had Stewart's Watch, a group from Stewart's Watch, which is one of our smaller communities, but they are located right on the wetlands, and they have a major swale that runs along between them and Tingle, which services a large section of town, including, whoa, I'm not sure I can do that, Will, but the swale services a lot of the areas of Bethany West, and part of the Candlelight area. So it services a lot of drainage. We met with them about 6 to 8 weeks ago, had a good discussion, and we looked at their swale. They were actually, Stewart's Watch is about as affected as a lot of the other communities, and it's not just the swale. They are right on the wetlands, and if the water gets high enough, the water's going to come into Stewart's Watch. So we kind of discussed the situation overall on town, so I think it was very informative, not only for us from them, but also what we and what Cliff went over with them as to how the town is impacted by the entire town, and especially the areas to the north of 26 are impacted by the bay, storm surge, and from high tides. So what the town agreed to was to clean out the swale a little bit. It was draining fine, but Phragmite around here grows like crazy, so a lot of that was removed, and the swale was opened up. There are several pictures here of this, the one right there. The timing for this was during the high tides, so the swale does not usually operate at this height. That's the point where the swale enters the loop canal. You can see how high it is on the bulkhead there, so that gives you an indication of the level of the tide from storm surge and the high tides. But it was cleaned out. It's wide open all the way down through now. It functioned before, but it functions better now. Normally, this section that you see right here, which is filled with water due to the back bays, is dry during the summer. I won't say dry, but it's down. There's no water. There's no standing water, so it functions. It functions well. But the town cleaned it all out. From here on out, it's going to be the responsibility of the owners in Stewart's Watch and along Tingle to keep their own swale. It's their swale open, but we've taken the steps to help them out. Any thoughts? Comments?
Hey, Ron. I'm just going to point out something that I went to a seminar recently about Phragmites. And within the environmental community, there seems to be more people that are looking at Phragmites in a beneficial way, particularly that frag-dominated wetlands are some of the best wetlands at keeping up with sea level rise. This is a little bit from left field here talking about this, and I don't think in this kind of areas, this is not a place where we want to be promoting frag, particularly because it will affect our stormwater, our rainwater runoff drainage. But it's very interesting that people are starting to take a different look at Phragmites.
That's interesting.
Very interesting, yeah.
Very interesting. I mean, it's an invasive species. It's not native.
Although there is a native
Variant, yeah.
variant,
Is it native frag?
our state botanist said that it's in very, very minute quantities anymore in the state. So most everything that's out there is the invasive form of it.
Yeah.
While it is an invasive plant, we've noticed in our backyard at our development that because of the salinity or something of the water back there, there is less and less of the Phragmite growing back there, and as you call it, the high tide bush, the high tide bush is starting to take over back there. And so I think it's it's just an indication of salinity and change that's causing this, because there is less Phragmite back there.
So when you say high tide bush, are you talking about native species?
I'm not sure if it's native or not, but
It is.
okay,
It is?
because it seems to be the one that grows along Route 1 out by the bridge, quite a bit.
Add to that?
Yeah, it's, you'll see it very prominently soon. It has a white cottony mass flower to it. Once it starts really blooming, then you'll see the little pieces of looks like cotton flying around in the wind. And that's the kind of the same area that the frag tends to grow at that level, above, above mean high water.
Isn't frag more of a borderline plant? It usually grows on the edges of wetlands, but not in the center?
Yes,
that right?
to the point that Mayor Gordon was making.
Yeah.
And as you're seeing the bay increase in height, then you're finding some of the areas of frag decreasing as the tidal waters take over
Right.
more of the inland bays.
Okay. Interesting. Any comments? Any more discussion? Okay, just wanted to bring that up. I thought that was...
You made
Sure.
a comment, you said that the landowner on the swale is responsible for cleaning out the swale?
That particular one, because it's private property.
Well, most all your swales are private property.
Not all of them.
Okay, say it's private property and something that people own it. Are they responsible for keeping it clean?
They should keep their own swale clean. We've done it. The town has cleaned it out. It's all
Okay,
in good shape
A lot of
right
those
now.
swales literally divide the property between the,
Yes,
In other words, the middle
yes,
of
and they do here too.
the middle of the
And-
property line is right down the swale, so that means
Sometimes.
the property owner on one side is responsible for that side. In other words, two property owners could be responsible. I haven't seen anybody been told that they have to maintain the swale. I've noticed the town's been doing it for years.
At the point in time, we reached an agreement with Stewart's Watch and some of the residents on Tingle. We told them we would absorb the cost of cleaning the swale if they would maintain it moving forward. The statute says the homeowner's responsible, but in order to facilitate keeping the swales open, which are necessary for us to facilitate drainage in the community, the town does a lot of work itself.
What if they don't maintain it?
Well, right now, we're starting from scratch on this particular swale, so it'll be fairly easy to enforce. Going back through the whole community and trying to bring everybody up to that standard would be a gigantic task. I think that would be on the pale for the community, so.
The town does an immense amount of cleaning swales. They've been working out here along Route 1 all week. I know the ones that run down between like Hollywood and Parkwood, and there's some others down there. I don't know whether there's property between them that the town owns, but I know the town maintains that swale, all those swales.
I'm not sure. There are so many different variations of who owns what and what sort of easement is here and what sort of easement is there, so.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody has a complaint, they can bring it into the town and it can be addressed, and more than likely, the town will take care of at least a part of it. Do you have one in particular you're concerned about?
Oh, I live on that swale, and I did maintain it, in two ways. One, making sure sticks and stuff didn't block it, or after a pretty good storm. And two, the bank on my side of the property, well, I planted trees so it didn't erode into the swale. Since the town, without my permission, although it isn't right away, easement, covered the swale up with, they put culvert pipe in it and covered it up behind my house. Don't really explain to me why that was necessary. I kind of like having the swale there. But maintaining it was a pain, kind of a pain, but I did do it.
Sure. I think most people, especially people who are permanent residents, do it. Cliff, do you have any more comments on that?
I don't.
Okay.
Well, my point is, I didn't want to get a letter from the town saying, hey, clean the swale out, and we're going to fine you $5,000.
How about
Well, I think you'll
4,000?
find the town is fairly reasonable. Have you ever gotten a letter like that?
No, I don't want.
I don't think you will.
There's a lot of people, especially there's a lot of older people who live down behind you, that will have a difficult time digging out the swale that is open in their property.
Yeah.
And we just don't want to see some kind of,
Well, I think the town has been very accommodating, at least that's been my experience.
so you're going to keep being accommodating?
Pardon me?
Are
I think the town usually is fairly accommodating. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Water Resources Development Act of 2024. This is a newly enacted act, an act championed by our Senator Carper, wonderful guy. He's certainly done unbelievable things for him. And just some of the things that are in that act that should be coming forward here soon and will be affecting us. One of the major ones is they are reducing the local contribution to replenishment, renourishment from a 35% local to a 20% local, and that's 80% federal. That's an incredible change and an incredible burden off of the state and local. It is also this act also reduces the contribution requirement, the local requirement, from 50% to 10% for the Back Bay study, which was on hold and now is proceeding. I'm not sure of the status of that. Jordana, do you have any updates on it? Okay, I know it's progressing. Also, there is $25 million in the act attributed to beach communities to help with improve the sewer, stormwater treatment, water storage, and other related wastewater infrastructure. There's also increasing an authorized funding for environmental infrastructure projects in Sussex County and the other counties of up to $40 million each county. So, in essence, a lot of good stuff. I hope we've gotten a lot of things during the Carper administration, and he has been great for the state of Delaware. Any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I have a comment to Cliff. As I'm looking at this,
You want to speak?
As I'm looking at this, it talks about navigation, and the Loop Canal had most of the time was non-navigable across from the kayaks where it comes into the salt pond. Is the town going to do anything about that?
For purposes of regulation by both state and federal offices, the Loop Canal is not considered a navigable waterway. So the Assawoman is, but the Loop Canal is not. So we're having engineering work done regarding dredging the loop, but just like the Assawoman, if we invest millions of dollars to dredge the loop, it'll silt over fairly quickly. So we're looking at proceeding with that, but also looking at funding sources to help pay for the expense of dredging the loop and our other canals also.
Yeah, it's a, I go through there and I have a very shallow draft boat, and this year was the toughest ever.
Well, sometimes you have to get out and walk, so yeah.
Yeah, or have somebody push me.
Or push you, okay.
But it seems to me that it isn't just a dredge issue. It seems to be like coming from the kayaks, the sand is washing down from the kayak.
It's part of the whole issue with regarding how we flood. Water pushes in from the Assawoman. It's sort of counterintuitive. You would think much of it comes from Fred Hudson and pushes in from Fred Hudson. But the fact is that 80, 85, 90% of our flooding pushes in from the Assawoman into the loop, scours the shores, and deposits that silt, especially as it pushes into the salt pond itself.
Yeah, so the town is, my takeaway from what you're saying is the town is looking into doing something.
We've
there.
invested a good bit of money at this point in time to have engineers do the preliminary work and survey work to tell us what we need to do to dredge the entire loop, not the circle east of Route 1, but everything west. So it's in the process, but it's not a priority at this time.
Check. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Ron, I do have a question. It's probably geared toward Cliff. Reducing the local contribution requirement for renourishing. It seems contradictory to the economic.
Well, it sure is,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
Can you address that real quickly?
Sure, so when we get into my portion of the yada yada here today,
Okay.
I'll go over that. Okay.
So noted.
Well, I
Okay.
think we've just about reached that portion, so
Okay. Are
I'll
we
pass
there?
the microphone on to you, Cliff. Go ahead.
There you go. The mayor had mentioned where we were with the dam at the confluence of the Loop and the Assawam. And for anyone who doesn't know, and I think everybody in the room has heard us speak about it, we know that this is a solution to the majority, 90+% of our ongoing nuisance flooding, just like the flooding we're seeing here today and have seen over most of the last 2 to 3 weeks here in Bethany Beach, where Pennsylvania Avenue is the poster child for flooding, but a good third of the community north of 26 is flooded consistently because of the flooding that we've talked about that pushes in from the Loop, from the Assawam, that comes from our inland bays, primarily the Indian River Bay. We've reached the point with DENREC where we were exploring permitting, and that sort of came to a stop when we were told we had to resolve some issues regarding deed restrictions in the deeds that transferred the property of the Assawam, that's the Assawam Canal, and the banks on 50 feet of both the east and west side of the Assawam, conveyed that to the state of Delaware. So we have to work through those issues, and then we can then proceed with the permitting process, which will be permitting from both DENREC and the U.S. Army Corps. But that's been something that's has certainly slowed us down, and we hope to work through over the next few months. The Living Shoreline Project, which is going to restore the bank and preserve the bank that separates Lake Bethany, the land spit at the north side of Lake Bethany, and the Loop Canal is going ahead really at a point in time where we will, in the next probably month or so, be releasing bid documents and hope to have that work done, at least the retaining wall on the north side of the land spit, which is about 850 feet of retaining wall, accomplished here this year, hopefully before the season begins. And then the living wall on the south side of the land spit would be something we would do in our next fiscal year, in fiscal 26, after April 1st. Thanks to Terry, the roughly $700,000 of that, because of her hard work in looking for grants for the town, will be picked up by grant resources, and about $47,000 of that total amount will come to the town. But that should be something we see underway here, weather permitting, maybe late fall or certainly early spring. So that's progress, at least on one front. The Back Bay study, as the mayor mentioned, the Army Corps identified 11 different areas, 11 separate areas from Connecticut to Norfolk, and including Baltimore on the Chesapeake Bay, Norfolk and the Chesapeake Bay, Virginia Beach, up to Connecticut. And they did that, Sandy hit us in 2012. They developed the funding to do studies in these different areas in 2015, and Delaware was approached about participating in that study and has pushed back on that for a number of years. Originally, the reason was that the Back Bay study was estimated to cost $3 million with a 50-50 cost share to the state, and Delaware pushed back on that to the point in time the Corps came back and said, okay, well, we'll make it a $2 million study. Can you afford $1 million? And that hung out there for a couple of years. And then suddenly, about a year and a half ago, the state said that they would participate. There was a charrette with stakeholders, a large meeting with stakeholders, with Corps officials, and they began to talk about the scope of the study and some of the things the study might look at. And then suddenly Delaware did not participate again, and at that point in time, I think the Corps stepped back from the project. August 19th of 2024, the Corps reinitiated the project, and I think that might have been in conjunction with the fact that they were aware of what was in the WRDA bill, where the expense for the study changed from 50-50 to 90-10, with 90% being funded by the federal government and 10% by the state. The catch there is that the estimated cost now for the study is not $3 million, it's between $9 million and $10 million. That's all well and good with the thought that the Corps will pick up 90% of that, but the Corps, as we also found out, even though the bill says there will be a 90-10 split, the Corps has not been funded for that other $7 or $8 million at this point in time. So that's one issue that may or may not impact, certainly will, unless the funding is forthcoming to pick up the cost for the Back Bay study.
Cliff, in that case, have the other states gone ahead and done all this? We're just way behind?
We're way behind. Jersey's in the process where they actually have final designs on the results of their study. So they do the study, they'll come back with suggestions. Suggestions will be vetted, and then they'll go ahead with the design work. It's generally a 3 to 4 year process, and Jersey is sitting there right now with a number of projects. The benefit to all of that is with the Back Bay study. If funding becomes available, as funding did after Hurricane Sandy, for those projects, if they're already in the hopper, they've been vetted and approved, then it flows right to the projects and the projects are initiated. Otherwise, you're in a 3 to 4 year process for every new thing that you do. Route 1, we had a presentation here by DelDOT and DENREC last week. We have been involved with DelDOT on thoughts about Route 1 evacuation routes. Right now, their main focus, and rightfully so, is the area north of the Indian River Inlet. But we've also had discussions with the group that's looking at evacuation routes about something that's probably more important to us, and that is our own flooding on 26 that comes up from the Loop Canal, crosses over into Turtle Walk, and then blocks Route 26. And we've also had dialogues with the same study group about Vines Creek and its vulnerability for flooding, because I don't think anyone who's lived here for any length of time wants to evacuate going north or south. Everybody's going to be going west. There's not a real expectation on a bad storm that you're making it to Maryland or making it to Dewey Beach here, and I don't think we should. Yes, we should participate in everything that's going on, but we want to make sure that we can travel west as easily as we can. The 80-20 is tremendous in terms of the cost sharing for beach replenishment. But as this was going on, and we've known now for a long time that Senator Carper's office was working to make the split a little bit more fair, especially to the smaller communities on Delaware's coast, as opposed to some of the mega communities on Jersey's coast. At the same time that was going on, there's been an interest in DENREC for a number of years to attach the cost of replenishment to those, from their perception, who benefit the most from beach replenishment. They put together a study group to conduct an economic study. They invited participants from local communities, but not every community. They just wanted 1 or 2 participants. And those participants were never asked to provide fiscal data, financial data, economic data on their communities, their tax bases, what they felt their contribution was to the state economy. A study, as a matter of fact, that the Association of Coastal Towns that has just completed that talks about the significant impact on the coastal economy, not tourism, the entire coastal economy, now really shows us that the coastal economy is Delaware's #1 economic driver. I think we've easily surpassed agriculture at this point in time. So sustaining that benefit in the coastal economy and the draws for that coastal economy are Delaware's coastal towns. It's Rehoboth, it's Dewey, it's Bethany, to lesser degrees Fenwick and South Bethany, simply because of parking issues and access issues. But these are the communities that drive this economy. So this study was done, and I won't say in a vacuum, but again with a very little input from people outside of DENREC's lobbyists and DENREC employees. And they came back here last week with their draft study recommendations that indicate that coastal communities should pay anywhere from 53% to 71% of cost for replenishment. 53% for Rehoboth and Dewey, 71% for Bethany and South Bethany, and 68 or 69% for Fenwick Island. And the big numbers there, the differences in number were a result of them coming to the conclusion that Rehoboth and Dewey were bigger tourist attractions than, say, Bethany Beach. And anybody who's been in Bethany Beach on a Saturday or Sunday in July and August knows that we far surpassed Dewey Beach for, say, as a tourist attraction. To that point, Garfield Parkway at Atlantic Avenue, by DelDOT's own numbers, is the busiest intersection in the entire state of Delaware, busier than any intersection in Rehoboth, Newark, when the university is in process, in Wilmington in the middle of a workday. Between 30 and 33,000 people cross Garfield Parkway on a busy Saturday or a busy Sunday in the summer. We have heard second and third hand, and we hope it's the case, that there won't be a lot of legislative support for this study. I think people realize that the design was maybe not as all-encompassing as it could be, and certainly ignored the impact of these beaches on Delaware's economy. But right now, that's what we've been told. This is the draft report. This draft report will be left by the Carney administration for the next governor and the next DENREC secretary to consider. Mayor, that's all I have.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I sat in on that Zoom call last week about this study. They didn't mention the percentages. Did that happen since then?
They mentioned it. They put a slide up. They put a slide up very quickly. I wrote them and said, could you put the slide up again?
Oh, you're the one that
I'm the guy that did that, yeah. But they gave that a good 10 or 15 seconds and took it off the screen.
Yeah.
And you would have to really have put some time and effort and energy in it to understand what the percentages were.
The thing that struck me when they talked about, what does the beach do for the area? They didn't talk about property values and stuff. All our houses here cost twice as much here than they would on a farmland, over in western Sussex or something. And that it stimulates the economy and all that. And it seemed like they skipped all that stuff.
They put it together, I think, to get and this is just Oak Cliff. They put it together to get the conclusion they wanted, and they got the conclusion they wanted.
Yeah, I think they
No
look at
offense
it.
to DENREC, I really apologize. So.
They look at it in reverse in terms of the value of property. It's like, well, there's all these rich people on the coast, so they can pay for it.
We were told initially when they began it that it would only look, all they wanted to know is who benefited directly from replenishment. And then we began to talk about, again, the economic impact of all these communities on the shore.
Sure.
That wasn't part of the consideration. Who directly benefits? So, I mean, obviously, the community, to a certain extent, at one point in time, we thought they were going to be looking at individual homeowners and looking at individual, say, well, anybody on the oceanfront here should pick up X percent of. But I think that was probably a task beyond the pale for everyone, so.
Like Cliff mentioned, there are so many tourists that come in here, on a weekend in the middle of July. It's incredible. And look, we have well over 1,000 parking spaces here. They're filled up just like that. And then you go beyond that to the bus shuttles that come in here, and it's a continuous line of them that come in from all the major communities that are to the back of us here. Lots of people coming into town.
And property values, as I mentioned, are all up, and that's taxes for the state.
Yeah, and the county, right? Yep, for sure. Okay, any other thoughts? Jim?
They've been kicking this, Dave Denrick has been kicking this around a couple of years, making the beach communities pay for a percentage of the beach clubs.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing from you all is, and other people, is I hope it doesn't happen. Okay, hope's not a good way to start planning for something. What if it,
Well, that's absolutely the case, but the
Denrick runs us through and tells us that we gotta pay, us being Bethany Beach, a certain percentage of beach clubs?
Bethany Beach, along with all the coastal communities, have been very, very active and very aggressive in pushing back on this through the Association of Coastal Towns, to the point in time that we've hired our own lobbyist, probably one of the better lobbyists in Delaware, to advocate for the communities. This past year, the Association of Coastal Towns hosted a very well-received lunch in Legislative Hall where we promoted the idea that these coastal communities are the driver of Delaware's largest economic engine. And so we're all involved, we're all pushing back, we're trying to get something done. Nobody's just sitting back waiting for it to happen.
Now, understand
sure.
that it seems that this Deneric juggernaut is still moving along. It hasn't gone away.
Well, I don't know what would happen. I guess we would take our 2,800 parcels and we would divide X number of $1 million, and then we would just assess everybody that number if we had to.
We can't put beach tags on people to go on the beach so that they pay for more.
We don't have a
Not the
plan.
plan.
No, we don't have that plan, Jim. No.
Certainly don't want it to be that plan.
Well, it's important to keep lobbying the state
Absolutely.
to forego and keep, if you want to keep beach enforcement.
Absolutely.
A lot more steps to go through.
Yes.
This isn't even legislation yet, and then it has to be submitted to the legislature, and our meeting with the legislators have all said that they're not for it at all.
Yes, and again, this is being done and left for the next administration. And this administration knows how it was done, that there's real concern regarding how it was done. And they are also very unpopular, and I think they're leaving something that probably won't get a lot of attention in the next administration or from DENREC for them to wrestle with, so.
And to your point, if it does pass, every town from here, Millville, everybody will be paying for it to get on the beach.
But we have not planned to do that.
Yeah. We haven't planned to do that, but we've all talked about it.
It's a thought.
It's a thought we hope we don't have to go to.
But as it stands now, off the,
Water Resources Development Act?
yeah, after that, that has mandated that the contribution is now 20%, is that correct?
Yes.
So we have a win there.
Well, it's a mixed blessing. When I saw the 20% number, and the night before, we looked at these new numbers, the 71%, I thought, well, now this makes the case for the state to be able to say, well, the numbers really diminished, so this will be more affordable for you. So, double-edged sword, if you will.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments? Thank you. Good discussion today. I'm going to move on to the next item. Matt, you want to talk about Bethany homeowners help the town fight flooding, our initiative we've had going for the last year?
Yeah, last year, before tourist season, before the season, we had great success, a lot of pamphlets, seemed like a lot of interest. We suspend that during the summer because we're more focused at handing them out to the homeowners and property owners versus somebody that lives, miles and miles away. So we'll be picking that back up again here soon, as seems like the tourists are kind of weaning off. So later in the month, there's no real set date. It's kind of a look at the weather, see what the influx of people is. Are there any questions about it?
And the pamphlets are available out in the lobby at all times, but there's an extra set of them out there right now if anybody's interested. And we encourage everybody who happens to be online, please come by and pick up one of those pamphlets. They're very informative, very helpful. It shows what all of our residents, all of us can do to help the town fight flooding. Thank you, Matt.
Certainly.
I don't really think, there's been a couple things we've had going back and forth during the year. John picks up a few things here as far as other studies and whatever. It's been good to discuss and look at, but I don't have anything in particular to go over. Does anybody else? Okay. That's the last I have of today, unless somebody else has something else they want to talk about. Jim?
I have a question. I'm not sure. It's not flooding and a flooding matter, but what committee in this town is handling proposed wind turbines off our shore.
There is no,
is handling that?
there is no committee because we don't, as a town, we don't have any control over that. It's not a town issue, it's a federal issue.
It trickles down to the local issue.
I think at the point in time it becomes an issue that the council would be involved in, the council will be the quote-unquote committee that reviews or makes decisions.
But just as a point, Fenwick and Ocean City have come out against it. Notice Bethany, Dewey, Rehoboth haven't said much. Recently, a proposal of the new wind company has proposed wind turbines that would be only 4 miles offshore. This is recent.
I've never heard that one. I thought they were all at least 10 miles, 12 miles, 14 miles offshore.
Yeah, they started out at 20, 30 miles, then 10, then 18, then 10. This is very recent.
It's a new proposal, it's a new bid that's coming out from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management for a new area on the outer continental shelf. New leases.
4 miles?
Yeah.
I think from Ocean City, maybe.
Yep.
Oh, from Ocean City?
Not from
It's
us.
very recent. Also, too, they're saying that these turbines would be, instead of 4 to 6 megawatts, they'll be 15 megawatts, which in turbine building, that means they're gonna be a lot bigger than a 4 megawatt. And this is all brand new. This company, it's another company that's trying to take over what, I'm not sure the name of the company, Orsted's one, that gave up, on proposing the wind turbines off New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland. But that doesn't mean they're going away now. A new company is saying, oh, like, we're interested in developing it.
Okay. I'm not aware of that. But- I mean, we'll certainly watch things, but, I mean, if it can become a local issue, we would do something, but it's not a local issue.
Well, if we're gonna sit there and look at those ugly things, it's a local issue.
They're not 4 miles off our coast. They're 4 miles off Ocean City.
Ocean City's only 5 miles south of here. It is a local issue. And, okay, talking to some people running for canal council, are you for this or are you against this industrialization and these wind turbines right off our coast? And they've had their problems. I don't think Bethany's taken enough stand. I guess this again, my question is what committee takes on this, or this is just a town council that,
It would be town council. There is no committee that's set up for that.
you start out with like writing a letter saying we're opposed to this. Good luck. They've had luck with that up in Nantucket. Yeah, they've had some luck. Yes, it has.
Well, I've heard that Ocean City is going to file a lawsuit. Let's see what they do, see how it goes.
Bill Bergfeld, I live in Gibson Avenue. The whole thing, there's a lot of misinformation about it all. And the fact is that we don't have any input right now.
Right.
And we may never get input. And so, that's one point. The second point is, if you take a survey of the town residents, there's probably going to be a fairly large amount of people that will be in support of renewables, in support of the alternate energy that's going to provide. So the town council, as the figurehead, I would assume that at some point, if there's any decision to be made by the town, instead of wasting money on lawsuits, that they would request from the people of Bethany Beach how they feel about windmills and alternate energy.
I would say that's,
I get emotional about it because, we just heard about the rising sea levels. And I've also, and everybody's heard about Iran. If Iran couldn't sell their oil on the world market because there was enough energy supplied by alternative, we wouldn't have this issue that Israel is facing right now. And the fact is that
And I think you're exactly right, and your key point in that was if the town has any sort of a issue with approval, which it doesn't at all now, then I think the town will do exactly what you say, and I think the council is well aware, not speaking for the council, but speaking for the council, that there's divided thought among the community. It's not just one way or the other.
Yeah. And if it were an issue that we should take on, absolutely. We should reach out and see what is the consensus among the residents of the town, the residents and landowners. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? I'm going to call for an adjournment. Do we have a motion?
I so move.
Second? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for coming, and thank you for coming, everybody who's online.
Everybody loves them, like you may have noticed that.
I know, but that's something we have to